software, and I'm just very excited now that that feature is sort of a core part of the spec. We'll see it being widely supported because it's such a key accessibility concern. But there are other kind of enhancements to accessibility in epub3. That was the demo. This is not part of epub3, but it's a spec that we kind of defer to. ARIA is used widely on the web, although the sort of most cool things about it haven't quite made it into all of the browsers. But it's a method of saying, like, if you're going to create a web app like Gmail, you should be able to make that accessible. But it's not really a web document. It's not like a page. It's really an application. So if you are going to embed things like menus and options and sort of non-traditional form buttons in a web app, you need to be able to tell a text-to-speech engine what they are and really like what they're for. This is not a button to select a checkbox. This is really a link that's going to open a submenu and then go off to the web to pull in some data. So when we're going to be creating these EPUB books that are themselves almost app-like in terms of their functionality, we want to make sure that we create those in a way that's accessible, especially when you're getting into making like textbooks that have interactive components in them. Obviously, they have to be accessible. So there are a few ways of adding these properties to the XHTML content. Again, not in epub3, but we sort of recommend you using them. And I show some examples. I have some demos, like videos, of this working. So what I decided to do is imagine a book where there's narrative in it, but there's also a kind of a hidden narrative that if you were a sighted user, you probably would touch or click to reveal. So you might have some text that says something, but if you hover over the right place, you find out sort of what the narrator of that bit was thinking. So what I actually wanted to do was something where there are no sort of obvious buttons. I'm not using like forms, so that you would have to do this kind of discovery process to find where to click on, which would mean that that might be completely opaque to someone who is only using a screen reader. So this is all in a web browser. This isn't exactly epub3, but it is compatible with epub3. So the first step of that analysis is to think about, well, what semantically are these components? So what the word delighted in my application, if you click on it, this thing happens. It's like a link. It's like an HTML anchor. But it isn't really. It's not a link from one place to another like a traditional hyperlink. It just has the behavior of it. And at the same time, this thing that pops up, what it really means is that it's this kind of aside to the text. It's not a core part of it. And ARIA encourages you to think about the text in terms of what role it actually plays, what these elements really are meant to be. So in addition to talking about what the sort of concept of it is, what it is at like a property level, then there's a sort of parallel set of states that some text, some object could be in. In this case, this item is often not displayed. So it might be visible or it might not. That state changes based on what the user has done. So I did some markup. This is just, this is essentially the same thing that would be in an EPUB book. It's XHTML5. So there are some parts of it that are semantic, like the fact that I marked up that thing that's like a pop-up as an aside. And then I have some ARIA roles and properties here that say that that word delighted, it's not an HTML anchor, but I gave it the role of a link because it behaves that way. I also indicated that if you were to engage with this, like to tap on it, that it has a pop-up element associated with it. And at the same time, for that aside, I said that its current state is that it's hidden. And that means it's hidden from any presentation layer, whether it's visual or auditory. And then there's you can do some nice stuff where you can use these ARIA attributes and sort of feed them into your CSS so that you essentially only have to mark up the document once in the semantic way, and it will provide the correct presentation for any kind of browser. If you don't know CSS, don't worry about it. So here it is running in a browser, and then I ran it through a text-to-speech engine. Moby Dick is done.
I could not be more submenu link delighted to see you, I exclaimed. Be more submenu link delighted.